I got to leave for the airport, I got tremendously nauseous.
Right.
So my body was saying, you can't do this. You can't do that. There's something wrong here.
It would probably be in your best interest to walk away with the ambivalence that, and the uncertainty. Like, you don't want to do it, but you do it anyway. I don't think that a lot of people can ever get to the point where they're going to be really convicted. There's probably going to be people that are like this forever. And then there are also, if we get more education and awareness, there are going to be people who could have really amplified this.
Are narcissists born or made? And if they're born that way, then what's the hopefulness for change? To answer this and many other questions, Dr. Peter Salerno joins me again today for this fascinating discussion. Thank you so much for joining me again, Dr. Salerno. You've become a favorite of mine and certainly a favorite of my audience, and I'm very excited to get back into the narcissistic personality disorder, but I also just want to talk about personality disorders in general and help us better understand them. But one of the things I've become aware of, and I'm experiencing it some myself, is that people are not happy to hear that personality disorders are maybe more inheritable than we're comfortable with. So what have you noticed about that, and why do you think that is such a painful concept?
I actually think that the majority of the reason why it's so painful or painfully received is because I think people and they shouldn't. I mean, why would they? But I think people don't understand what that means exactly. I think the term genetics historically has been associated with some pretty deplorable movements and things. I mean, I've had people comment when I say that there's a heritability factor that I'm endorsing eugenics.
Oh.
And so I think just the term genetic, first of all, has this implication of it's been associated with some pretty terrible movements. It's also been associated with predictive outcomes. It's been associated with hard wiring. None of these things are necessarily true, or they're much more complex than that. So, I mean, there's a difference between predicting an outcome based on genetics and, probability and flexibility and inflexibility and things like this. So I think a lot of the time it's having a conversation with someone who's open-minded enough to hear. I think it clarifies a lot of things and puts people at ease. But the initial response, especially from people who, we all have them, but people who have confirmation biases, like their brains are immediately going to feel attacked, and they're immediately going to try to hold on to the evidence they want to be correct versus hearing this new thing. I mean, the research I've done has shown that just the conversation of heritability and genetics in the field of psychology historically, it's been intentionally swept under the rug. It's been dismissed. People have been threatened for sharing their findings on it. People have published books 30 years after they've discovered this research for fear that they were going to get fired from their academic position or lose funding for research. So, I mean, this has been historically a big problem in our field. I think not only our field, but we're speaking about psychology. So that's my guess as to why it's so seemingly intimidating or painful to hear. But I think we could do a good job, and probably in this conversation too, of kind of alleviating a lot of that fear and worry.
Yeah, that's fascinating, because why don't we start there? Because I think that's really important what you said, and I want to unpack it, that you talked about just because something has been inherited, something's genetic, doesn't mean that it's necessarily going to be expressed. And I can even give a personal example. I know some of my genetics because I've had genetic testing, and I know that they say this is a poor causal. They used to thought this is a more direct causal effect, but it's not. So I'm positive for the warrior gene, which has been implicated with some people who have antisocial personality disorder. And by the way, my sons do too. Mm-hmm. And none of us have antisocial personality traits or personalities ourselves. Right. Although I can say, looking at my family, I can definitely point to individuals who did that I know of. So here I actually have the genetics for it, but it's not being expressed in me.
Right. Yeah, there's a difference there's a lot of factors when it comes to genetics. We can talk about, traditional family inheritance patterns. Mm-hmm. We can talk about gene copy number variations. So just these kind of interesting like deletions or duplications or, inversions that happen at the moment of conception that contribute to different traits being expressed. No fault of anyone, really. Then there's the randomness of development that has nothing to do with mom or dad so much as it has to do with just these alterations, or what are known as mutations, that are taking place through the natural course of development before you're born. There's also something...
And after you're born. Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
Because the other situation that happened in my life is that my adult son, my oldest son, was diagnosed with acute myeloid leukemia, which is always genetic.
Yeah.
It's always related to a genetic mutation, and chemotherapy targets the mutation. So they found his mutations, identified them, and then his chemotherapy was designed to attack them directly. And the testing for him for the biopsy isn't just a test for, is there any, cells, abnormal cells in his blood? They're looking at his genetics to see if the genetics have changed, which it was changed back.
Yes. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Very good point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then we actually have something known as intrinsic developmental variation, which is actually a non-genetic, non-environmental influence. Basically what it is it's like this third component where it's not how you were raised, so it has nothing to do with nurture, and it has nothing to do with your DNA sequence. It just has to do with things change as we develop. And so these changes can occur before we have an environment to influence us. So this could explain why something runs in a family and like other people get it and other family members don't. And also, when we talk about personality disorders, when we talk about psychopathology in general, we're really talking, there are exceptions to, you say the warrior gene, but it's not just that simple. We're really talking about polygenic conditions. We're talking about sometimes thousands of DNA differences. Then if you have enough of those risk factor DNA differences, you're more likely to develop something than someone else. But a lot of that has to do with randomness. I mean, it could run in families, but it also just has to do with the randomness of, the lottery of human DNA, because we have to factor that in. So none of this, also, just to be clear, is predictive of a certain outcome. So what that means is, just because you have, let's say, 500 DNA differences that are risk factors for depression, that doesn't mean that you are doomed to have major depressive disorder and it's going to be such a severe condition that you can't, you can't treat it or anything like that. There's so many complex factors involved in this. But what I actually really like about the genetic component is it's something that is narrowing down eventually how, it certainly informs our expectations of things, but it also narrows down how eventually, maybe not now, but maybe in 100 or 200 years, they're going to be able to treat these things in a way where it's successful. And that's really what we want. I mean, a lot of people complain they'll never change, but wouldn't it be nice if they all could? Because if they all could, then they would stop giving us trouble.
That's another thing I've noticed people get very confused about, is they end up thinking if you have one gene, then you're going to have this condition. No, it doesn't. It's very, like you said, it's extremely complicated. Yeah.
There's no such thing as a narcissistic gene. There's no such thing as a height gene or a heart disease gene. We're talking about polygenic. We're talking about sometimes thousands and thousands of DNA differences that together have, a pretty significant effect. And so what we're really looking at when we're talking about genes is we're looking at how much they contribute to the expression of certain traits that we associate with these disorders, right? So for example, when we talk about narcissism, some people have a significant amount of trait hostility or trait manipulativeness, right? And if you get enough of those, let's say, alterations that contribute to a severe level of that, then we're talking about something that's pathological. I mean, there's a healthy form of level of aggression, and then there's a really, really unhealthy excessive level. And so, so that's really what the genetic component is, not doing away with environmental influence, and it's not doing away with any of these other theories that have value. But what it's saying is, historically, we've missed a significant component to these disorders. Some say it's at least 50%, but could be upwards of heritability of 60, 70% in individuals. So it's basically no longer okay to just ignore the genetic influence, because it's going to help us make more sense of of these disorders, not only what causes them, but how to hopefully how to treat them, and then what expectations people have as far as why they can't seem to change on their own, because I've spoken to so many people who are like, if I can just be pretty confident that my partner or my dad or my child is so inflexible that they can't change on their own, at least that informs I'm not going to hold on to this pathological hope that, one day they're going to treat me better. And maybe this ability to work with them is outside of my control, and I can really only hope that they get the help they need, right? So, I mean, this is a more informative, important, piece to this. It's not saying your family has bad genes. There's no such thing as bad genes. It's not saying your family sucks and mine's, better because we don't have any borderline personalities or narcissists in our gene pool. That's not how it works at all. But I think that's what people fear, and that's what people think when they hear, genetic and genes and terms like.
Yeah, so it sounds like they end up getting worried that somehow that you're going to, that some lineages shouldn't exist because of this, and that's not actually what we're saying at all. That's a really great point. And I also think it's a good point that the reason this matters is because the confusion is so intense in these relationships that victims stay stuck for a long time, hoping and watching for change. And I think that's another key piece to this, is how sophisticated the manipulation is with some of these individuals.
Yeah. And I think the manipulation, I'm not defending it by any means, but if we are willing to look into, genetics and human genetics, not just family genetics, and we're willing to look into like ancient DNA and evolutionary processes and things like that, we'll see that maybe there at some point was an advantage to being a certain extreme way that's just no longer acceptable in cultures and societies that we want to be equal and we want to be cooperative. But maybe it was beneficial to be that aggressive or that manipulative for survival thousands of years ago. And because we all share the same DNA, those traits, it's going to take quite a long time for them, to die out, because there's an advantage to having them in certain contexts. And that might bring us to our definition and explanation of a personality disorder. It's the enduring problems that come along with a personality disorder are not acceptable according to the expectations of a particular culture. It's not that they are never acceptable, which is kind of hard for people to wrap their minds around too. But if we're being objective, that's the reality. Maybe some of these traits served a very important purpose for our survival a long time ago, and now they've sort of worn out their welcome, and they're not working well in intimate relationships.
Yeah. I'm thinking of dystopian societies. If we were to some reason have an apocalyptic event and we were at the end times, I'd want somebody who is strategic, vindictive, and certainly willing to make the hard calls.
Yeah, exactly. So we can't really, we can pathologize the behavior in the sense that it's abnormal according to what we have collectively decided is best for everyone. But it really, when we talk about these disorders, we're really talking about extreme differences in DNA sequence. We're not talking about, I don't like conversations about this person is bad or good, or, the behavior's bad, but I don't really like getting into the conversations of like the good and evil. I look at it more as like there's deficiency, and you have to have reasonable expectations of the deficiency, because if you keep expecting that person to develop a capacity that they don't have, you're going to be, investing 30, 40 years of your life on somebody who just, one, they don't believe they have a problem, and two, a lot of them don't have the capacity to fix the problem on their own. So, yeah.
Yeah, in fact, I was just recently looking at the list of what it takes to create psychological change, which honestly, that's what you and I have done for a living, is we bring people come into the office, they want change. That's why they're coming in. They're spending money. There's an investment of time, investment of themselves, investment in the cost. And yet, even in those situations, change is extremely difficult to achieve. We often resist any form of change, despite wanting change. So then when you're talking about somebody who doesn't even think that they have a problem, and the skills that it takes to get them to get there is so high that most of us aren't very good at a lot of those anyway.
Yeah.
I find that I don't think we understand what change even means and the difficulty of it.
That's a fascinating point. It's a very important point. Even changes that are good for us with collaborative people are exceedingly difficult. So, psychotherapy is difficult for anybody. It's not like some people come in and they have a knack for it, because even I use this example a lot, like trying to get a narcissist to be more empathic on their own is like trying to get an introvert to become more extroverted on their own. There's probably some wiggle room for an introvert who really wants to do something, maybe performative. Maybe they have a passion for wanting to perform, and they just don't have the energy to do it because they're more introverted. There's probably some room for them to find a way to make that happen, but not without some pretty significant change. Because even those traits, even those, like, we'll say neutral traits that are not, they're benign, they're not malignant or pathological. Those are extremely stable over time. And so those are difficult to change too. So somebody who's collaborative, cooperative, motivated, to get them to change their traits is difficult enough, let alone somebody who has this egocentric idea that, I'm in harmony with myself. You're the one who has a problem with me. I don't need to change. So, that's just an extra step. But yeah, I'm really glad you brought that up. All change is extremely difficult.
It really is. And we don't understand the degree that we resist it. In fact, that's a key piece of the training that you and I had, was learning to deal with what we call resistance.
Mm-hmm.
People come into the room and say, I want it, I want it, I want it, and then nothing changes. And we will spend years sometimes for minimal outcome with somebody who wants this desperately.
Right. Yeah, a lot of help rejection. The result of not refusal,
right.
Like you're saying, resistance, because our brains are essentially prediction machines, and we want to predict outcomes. And if now we're changing something, it freaks our brain out. It's like, we don't like this idea. Now you're intentionally putting your brain in a state of ambivalence, when it really knew everything it needed to know or wanted to know before you started trying to rock the boat. And so that's another reason why change is so difficult, is because we're also going against our biology in a way.
Yeah, because I say the mind is a meaning-making machine, but its intent for meaning is survival.
Yes.
So he has made meaning for its longevity, and this is what has worked. And now you're telling it that it needs to do something different.
Right.
That's a violation of everything that it's ever known, based upon its predictive patterns.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you look at, when we started seeing our ability to see things we couldn't see even 10 years ago with personal genomics and molecular genetics and all this fascinating stuff, we're seeing more and more everything across the board of psychological traits: weight, eating habits, substance use habits, work habits. All of these things are related to, like, if somebody has, it's a lot, there's a lot more to it than just willpower or not having willpower. You know what I mean? Like, things. It's just, our brains and our bodies are intentionally inflexible because they want to create a stasis, even if the stasis isn't good. That's what it wants. And so, we're starting to see just how much we're going up against in our
right.
biology.
Right. I'm an introvert who's also autistic, so I know most people can't tell because I'm so outgoing, and I'm able to project as if I'm not. But on the days that I have a lot of contact with people, I'll end the day in pain, physically in pain from the cost of it to me to do that. Now, I'm able to do that, but it's costing me a whole lot, and I'm going to have to rest for a while in order to go back to normal. So that's what you're saying. For me, it's like shoving a rock up a hill. I can do it. I'm capable of it.
Yeah.
But I can't change the fact that there's a neurotransmitter involvement I'm going to pay out on that for that.
Yeah. It's going to affect your body budget for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So when we say all of this, I know that probably those listening to us are saying, so what are you really saying? And I know that you're saying, for one, don't see this as hopelessness, but also I'm hearing you say we need to be very, very realistic, but let's then turn it from the practical standpoint of what is the implications for this. If people are this way, and they maybe even come out this way, and you and I both have seen cases where families have come in and said there's something different about this child, and I've tried this and I've done that, and they're still extremely difficult. I mean, I used to work with runaway teens, and there would be kids that it doesn't really matter what you do. Right. They're going to be antagonistic and they're going to break the rules, and you could feel them heading towards a very difficult road.
Yeah.
So let's talk about what the implications are for this.
Well, I think the implications are there's going to be a number of individuals, let's say that they are predisposed to being vulnerable or susceptible to having certain traits that once combined with an environment are like sort of like the perfect cocktail for the development of a personality disorder, right? Because I think a lot of people think that I throw the environmental baby out with the bathwater, and I don't. I mean, environment is absolutely important. It affects our lifestyle. It exposes us to things. It's not sufficient to be a causal factor for these disorders, but it certainly makes a huge difference. So we're talking about there are going to be certain people who we'll just say luck of the lottery are going to have certain traits. You mentioned antagonism. They have actually measured and done longitudinal studies from children from the age 2 who are presenting with callous unemotional traits, which are the traits that are operative in conduct disorder and eventually sometimes antisocial personality. At age 2, they're seeing these traits, regardless of environment, right? So we're seeing this vulnerability or susceptibility to certain heritability of traits. And then now we also have to consider the severity and the intensity and the frequency of the behavior, because it's not just a narcissist is a narcissist is a narcissist. It's not just every psychopath is a serial killer. I mean, that's way too narrow and way too simplified. All this is to say there are going to be cases that are treatable. I would say that the best case scenario is to treat them as soon as you start seeing the indicators, so they have less time to practice, and maybe the right professional can help these children come up with ways to operate in society that are in their best interest, that are going to prevent them from getting in trouble with the law and having a poor quality of life. But then there are also going to be cases that sadly are just not workable or not treatable. So, I mean, the implications are there's probably going to be people that are like this forever. And then there are also, if we get more education and awareness, there are going to be people who could have really amplified this, but the right intervention prevented that, which I think is wonderful. And I guarantee you, based on the way things are going as far as advanced technologies, there will be a day where we can predict this and test for it even before the behavioral manifestations. And that's going to inform people, because they're already doing that with schizophrenia and I think autism too. So that's not, again, this isn't good or bad, right or wrong. This is just knowledge that's very important to seeing, if we can catch it early, the earlier the better. I've cited studies in my book on narcissism where children who were participating in certain therapies, mentalization-based therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy early on. They've done the neuroimaging findings post-therapy showed that the structure and functioning of the brain shifted, and these pathological traits decreased, and these kids stopped behaving ruthlessly and and in a narcissistic fashion. So, I mean, if that's not hope, I don't know what is. But we need to stop thinking that we can just nurture everybody out of this with the right parenting style, and that there's no such thing as a predisposed influence. That's what I think the implication is as well. We need to stop thinking that way and just kind of accept the reality of what science has taught us.
I come across the work on obsessive compulsive disorders to where they found, because there's not a good medication treatment for that. That's there's just a big struggle to medically fix this. But the treatment was to have them work through the compulsion, to experience it, discover that there was no negative outcome, and that they actually found that it changed the chemical makeup of the brain, that it in itself was the treatment,
Right.
was the tolerance and the resistance of the compulsion.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fascinating. You mentioned, I had a reaction. You mentioned that they can now tell somebody's going to be autistic early on. There's a part of me is like, would I have wanted to know and would it have changed anything? Because all my sons are as well. And as a part of me, it's like, it's who I am. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if I would. I'm sure that some people would feel that way. It's like, I don't really want to lose my hyper focus, and I don't mind that I'm very strong introvert. There's things that.
Yeah. No, I mean, I don't think that would be, I mean, I can't speak for everyone, and I can't speak for the research, but I think what would be important to know about that is, let's say you have a really neurotic, impatient mother who is going to have an autistic child. And if the mother or father knew what to expect, maybe they would be a little bit more understanding, validating, and have more realistic expectations on how to raise that child versus raising a child who has, like you said, maybe like obsessive compulsive tendencies, or so it's like it's almost like it's like a way of informing expectations so that you can prepare. Maybe not every parent has a personality to tolerate somebody who's pathologically narcissistic, and you know what? There might be parents who it's not too hard for them to set the boundaries and stay emotionally detached enough not to personalize all of the manipulation and the insults. Maybe there's people out there who do wonders with narcissistic kids. So I think that's why knowing would be helpful. I don't think it's necessarily so that you try to pathologize it, or I think it's for confidence boosting personally.
Interesting. I'm grinning because I was the director of a runaway shelter, and we had a child come in who was parents needed respite. This kid was just exhausting this family.
Yeah.
And this was not a fun child. I mean, seriously, he was a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
So I collectively, because I had seen this happen in graduate school, where the graduate students ran a behavioral study on our professor, who is big time into behavioralism himself. Whenever he would step near the door, we'd give him our attention, and whenever he stepped near the blackboard, we wouldn't. And before we knew it, he was standing by the door for most of the class. So I got the rest of the group, it was a small group of kids, in on this, and we decided how we were going to reward good behavior and not reward bad behavior. It worked.
Yeah.
He didn't even know that we were doing this to him, and it worked. The kid became more pleasant. But here's the difference. I wasn't invested. His obnoxiousness didn't bother me.
Right.
I didn't have any skin in the game.
Yeah.
And I got to go home at the end of the day,
Right.
so.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great example. I think that some people are parents should know this stuff rather than deny it or shy away from it, or even worry about it, because worrying doesn't really, worrying is not the best intervention to affect change. So I think that, and it depends on who you're talking to. So I've been attending seminars on personality pathology for a very long time, and getting specializations and certifications and understanding it, treating the abuse that results from it. It's just something I've always gravitated to in my career. And I've worked with people and attended seminars who said, we really got this wrong. It's not that it can't be treated. It's that they don't think they need treatment, so oftentimes they don't come. But if they do end up somehow, some way coming to treatment, there's a lot of cases where these individuals can change. And so that's hopeful. I don't like the idea that no change is possible. Now, there are some cases of that, especially with psychopathy and, antisocial personality. Like, I don't know of one documented case of somebody who stopped being that way, even with treatment and rehabilitation, which is sad. That's a sad, gloomy reality. There's been some studies that show if they have the capacity, interestingly, they have the capacity to be depressed, that might actually assist some change. But it's a lot of the mild to moderate cases of cluster B pathology, when we're talking about borderline narcissistic and histrionic, like there's lots of cases of people improving, and we want that, because again, we don't want this to be something that can't be treated, you know.
I'm not for sure, though, that everyone is equally susceptible to a narcissist. I think there's also personality traits that make some of us more vulnerable than others of us. What do you think of that?
That's a great question. I think, I mean, obviously, I can't say with any certainty, you know, I can't make a generalization. I think that narcissists, people who are pathological, I mean, they are who they are. They have a tendency to vet everybody. You know, they use image and impression management, you know, across the board, depending on what they want. So I think that we're all susceptible to being manipulated or duped by one. I do think that there are certain people who, for one reason or another, and it could be, you know, some inherent traits, it could be a skill set that they've developed, something I try to help people that I work with develop. If it doesn't come naturally, I had to learn that, and I had to develop that in myself too. But I think there's certain people that probably can not necessarily be immune, but be more capable of, you know, not falling too deep into the manipulation. But I don't want to say that that's like a superpower or a strength that other people can't cultivate. I think sometimes, yeah, I think there are certain people where it just comes naturally to they just don't entertain it enough, or for one reason or another, they have a trait that doesn't allow them to fall deeply into it as naturally, if that makes sense.
It does, because I started feeling edgy that I even said that, because I don't want to blame people.
No.
That's not what I was trying to do. And I was really being more self-reflective, to be honest with you. But that it takes tremendous effort for me to resist feeling so much compassion for another person. I have to work so hard to put my own needs and desires forward too, that I just naturally do that very easily. And it's painful for me. The idea of hurting another individual, even when I know that I'm not responsible for their feelings, and I even know that they're certainly not taking care of me very well, it still is extremely painful for me to resist that. It takes a lot of effort for me to do that. I have to work against some probably baked in characteristics in myself.
Sure. Yeah, and myself too. And it's interesting. I was in a recording studio doing my cognitive dissonance audiobook, and the producer, he's listening to it because he's recording, and you know, he's like, he starts to listen, and he's like, man, he's like, there's so many people I should send to talk to you. He goes, but I just tell him, like, screw that, get over it, like, move on. That person's not worth your time. He's like, so I don't think I'm being very helpful. But to me, like, to your point, he's one of those individuals that probably isn't gonna invest too much time trying to understand somebody or have compassion for them. He's probably just going to be like, I don't like the way you're what you're about. I'm going to move on. You know, so that's probably some just capacity he has that he's not even aware is like a trait that's useful for this.
Right.
But it's certainly not, I don't think it's something that can't be cultivated and practiced. And that's what I like to empower people to do, is like, you don't have to become a human lie detector, but you can start to get pretty skilled at recognizing inconsistencies and recognizing things that just seem a little bit off in people. And so you can, you know, almost kind of immunize yourself and protect yourself enough that you're not going to be so susceptible to the manipulation. But I think, to your point, there probably are some people who have just more of a natural tendency to avoid people like that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've just watched a movie. I know it came out last year. It's called Speak No Evil with James McAvoy. It's actually I don't know if you've seen it, but it's a really good example of an antisocial personality trait. It's very destructive and dangerous. And what was interesting is the couple that he's targeted, because that's what he does. He targets people. Right. Is the wife had inclination something's not adding up, and her husband's discounting it. I thought that was, first of all, a very interesting reversal. Because usually it's the woman who goes along, and it's the man like, well, no, I think there's something wrong here. So I love that they did that, but you could see the tension that it caused in that relationship, that she's seeing things that he can't see. And even at the end, I can tell you watch the movie, I don't agree with what they did.
Yeah.
I think they made the wrong decision. No,
Yeah.
but I ask myself, for those, just for those who haven't watched the movie, that they defeat him, but they don't destroy him.
Mm-hmm.
And my thought as I'm watching the end of the movie is, if you don't destroy him, he's going to come back after you, because this is a guy who will not stop.
He won't stop.
No. And so I thought, but could I have had it in me to do that? Even though I know that's what it would have been required to protect myself, do I have that capacity?
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of us I see victims all the time really struggle with that. And it gets played out in much minor ways of like, he says he needs me, or she says they don't know what they're going to do without me. I don't know how I can bear knowing that they're hurting without me. Like, yeah, but they've hurt you so much.
Right.
They've cost you so much.
Yeah. There. People who feel obligated to stick around, or to rescue, or to intervene in the life of somebody who's hurt them tremendously. I tell people, like, it doesn't feel good to think this way, but if you have experienced this person in ways where there's like an enduring pattern of behavior and the way they treat you, you're gonna have, it would probably be in your best interest to walk away with the ambivalence that, and the uncertainty, like you don't want to do it, but you do it anyway. I don't think that a lot of people can ever get to the point where they're going to be really convicted, that I should walk away. So I actually, tell some people, you're not going to know when you do it. You just need to do it anyway. Yeah.
That's such a powerful point, because that's where people get stuck. They keep waiting for clarity.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, I don't know if I would have ever gotten to the place of clarity.
Speaking from my own personal experience, I was ambivalent and uncertain before, during, and after. And I made the decision to take the risk, and almost kind of had to convince myself, this is just a trial run. I'm going to try to work it out later, but I'm just going to, I'm just going to get out of Dodge temporarily, knowing full well that that's not what my mind and body were telling me to do. So this idea that you're going to have this full blown confidence and clarity that this is the decision and this is the defining line, I don't think it happens for people. And that's part of that cognitive dissonance. It's, you're playing, there's this tension and this clash of opposing like elements in your beliefs simultaneously telling you completely contradictory things. I don't think you're going to conquer that and then get out. I think you're going to have to battle with it, get out, and then battle with it, is kind of how I see it.
I hate that. I'll tell you, Peter, I hate that.
Yeah.
I mentioned to you, you and I had a conversation last week that I was seeing somebody, and I was supposed to visit him in Santa Barbara this last week.
Yeah.
I don't know if I should take that out or not, but
okay.
I was gonna visit him this last week, and as I got to leave for the airport, I got nauseous, like tremendously nauseous. To the point I actually said to my son, you got to drive differently because I'm going to throw up. Oh. And then I kept thinking, I don't know if I can get onto this plane because I just feel so already, and I have travel sickness. I get kind of car sickness. Yeah. So I stopped and I called the trip off and canceled the flight. And then it went away. And I knew when this was happening, this was psychosomatic. I knew that because I knew I hadn't eaten anything wrong and I hadn't been around anybody with the flu. Right. So my body was saying, you can't do this. You can't do that. There's something wrong here. And I kept thinking, but I see all these green flags and it looks so great. But I did the hard thing. It was so hard, but I listened to myself and didn't force myself through it. And afterwards, I felt such relief that later that day, I went ahead and said, hey, this is just not going to work. I have to listen to myself. Something's wrong here. This isn't going to work. But I'll tell you that process, although it was faster, before I'd spent more than a year in that toxic relationship trying to battle with myself over, should I stay? Should I go? To the point of I was, very physically ill as a result of that. But at least my head didn't catch up. I still couldn't see it until looking back, the post-mortem is always much more clarity there. Yeah. But now, but at least I was faster at listening. And that to me, I feel like that's a big win. But it's
a huge win.
Hard work. It's such hard work.
I mean, that ambiguity and that uncertainty, we just don't, we try to avoid at all costs. I think sometimes it's better to grieve the potential than to stay in something because you just want it so badly, so
Or for me, it wasn't even, I mean, I wasn't pursuing this. This kind of happened to me. So it wasn't
yeah.
like, and I was even when I was in the middle, like, do I want to be in a relationship? I like being single. It's been really good. I mean, life is really good for me. But to me, it was, I don't want to hurt somebody. Again, my compassionate side's so massive that it's a trap for me.
Mm-hmm.
And it traps me. It literally traps me.
Well, and then this can actually, it can have like this sort of, this lingering side effect of after you're in a relationship with somebody with this, the ability to so skillfully, covertly manipulate you. I think there's going to be things that these individuals do on that we'll just never be privy to. We'll never know that the vast depth of it. We can know a lot, but it really does change your mind. It changes your brain, and it makes you. There's a lot of recovery that's involved in just. Not just the cognitive dissonance of the relationship, but trust and safety and things in general that are just kind of compromised and shift more longer term side effects of it. I mean, so
yeah, I was feeling that too.
Yeah,
I could feel like I've had a lot of trauma,
yeah.
a lot of bad trauma in my life, and I could feel like, man, but but I don't want to be one of these individuals, and I feel bad when I hear individuals say, I'm never going to take that risk again. I don't want to live like that. That to me is not a solution.
No, it's not.
But there's a part of me is like, should I be resentful over the way that it's changed? Am I changed? Oh, absolutely. In fact, that my trauma started, and I know you don't know this part of me, but I had severe sexual trauma that started before the age of 4. So, I mean, severe, horrific level. I don't know who I would be today because it's changed me. You can't undo that change when it's so early and introduced for such a very long period of time. I was around very predatory, pathological, antisocial personality disorders. That's who I was around.
Yeah.
So when you live in that kind of petri dish of danger, like literally when I was little, I caught myself realizing I walked into a room and figured out where all the hiding spaces are. And I realized I was looking for hiding spaces for a 5-year-old.
Wow.
So when you have that kind of mindset of danger, I don't know who I would be today had that not occurred to me. Sure. But there's a part of me that has to work past, and I know a lot of people that I talk to feel this way too. What do we do with the pain of that, the loss and the anger over that? That it has changed us. And yet there's part of me that says, but not all the changes are bad.
No.
Some of these things are necessary. It makes me a little wiser to the world. And it probably has given me the capacity to see into people that I might not have otherwise had,
I agree with that wholeheartedly. And I've received so much appreciation for my own experiences from people that I've helped, which, and they bring it up. They're like, I don't mean to sound weird, but I'm wondering, like, not only your professionalism but your personal experiences. I'm grateful for them because it led you to me and in a weird way. And I mean, yeah, it definitely changes us. It's not always negative. My heart breaks for people who say that they are never gonna love again or never trust again or never try again. I could be alone. I never want, and I mean that actually did happen to me. I met my wife, and then she still jokes that I ghosted her for a year because we were, in the process of really getting to know each other. I could tell that she meant so much to me that she had the capacity to hurt me deeply after this. And so I started, not ghosting her, but, creating distance out of fear that, like, what if this just happens again? Like, what if I just put all of my, eggs in this basket and I literally do a repeat of, I don't think I could survive another one. And so I kind of started to slowly distance myself, and she was gracious and wonderful and forgiving enough to give me a second chance when I just decided, you know what, you're worth the risk. And if I, fool me once, shame on me, fool me twice. But, fortunately that didn't happen. I was sort of like stuck between this overgeneralization of people mistreating other people, and I had to work through that. Even as a professional, like we're not immune to it. So
right.
I had a lot of things to work through, and I my point is there's always going to be an element of risk when you put yourself out there again, but that element of risk shouldn't be a deterrent, like to not try again. There are good people out there. Not everybody is trying to manipulate you. I think the more information and knowledge you can acquire about manipulative people, the more it actually protects you. Because a lot of times people are duped or sucker punched, if you will, because they just assume everybody, thinks like them and feels like them, and nobody would ever do harm intentionally. And, that's a wonderful idealized world to live in, but that's not the world we're living in.
Right.
But I think that these experiences and the information that's out there now strengthens us and gives us more ability to put ourselves out there again. So
I think it's made me grittier.
Yeah, absolutely. Great way of putting it. Yeah.
Yeah. And, in fact, it reminded me, I had this weird worldview, and that as I knew my family was not safe. And I knew that whatever I heard, I had to run it through the grid of reality, that it was probably, there was a level of maybe delusion involved because they really were not healthy people. But I didn't apply it to the general world. I somehow thought that there was the inside, my family was dysfunctional, but the world was functional. Now I'm like, no, you got to apply that carefulness to everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So yeah, it's fascinating. Well, this I could tell you, and I could just talk and talk. I'm so thrilled that you've been on today. This has been a really fascinating conversation. Yeah. I would love to jump over to the podcast extra and talk back to the person who can't make that decision, because I know that's a lot of this audience, and that even why they want to hear what we're talking about is because they're trying to make sense of the craziness and the chaos. So let's talk about how to break the cognitive dissonance, the steps to that. But before we wrap up, where can people find you?
I'm on Instagram at Dr. Peter Salerno. I do have a YouTube channel. There's not much on it, but it's the same handle. I have a website, drpetersalerno.com, and I have some books on Amazon.
All right. Thank you so much. This is really rich. I appreciate it deeply.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Well, that's a wrap for this week's episode. Are you following me on TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube? You can find me at Carrie McAvoy, PhD. Or you can learn more about me and my resources, such as the Toxic Free Relationship Club, at carriemcavoyphd.com. And I'll see you back here next week.